Oduol.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for opportunity to speak on this motion on the report. Mr. Speaker, I would like, given indeed the kind of issues which Mr. Speaker speak very directly to our responsibilities as Parliament. Mr. Speaker, in this report, as we look at the issues that have been raised by PIC and Oversight Committee, the issues that have, by their very nature, sought to highlight what could be very key areas of concern, and Mr. Speaker has been clearly indicated, in some cases appearing to get lost on technical grounds. I'd like, Mr. Speaker, as I start on the onset, to support the report, Mr. Speaker, in principle, because, Mr. Speaker, when we look at the recommendations, in particular, Mr. Speaker, I'd like, when I make this, to refer specifically to the recommendation that sought to identify, in terms of procedures of procurement, in terms of adhering to what would be seen to be the defined and accepted way of engagement. Mr. Speaker, in particular, when we consider that when we are looking at the PIC reports, then we would want to make reference to other institutions that we have, such as that of the Auditor General. I find, Mr. Speaker, that as we look at this report, we cannot ignore that there clearly is being highlighted areas in particular, Mr. Speaker, where we can see that those who are charged with responsibility institutions seem to have demonstrated not only a lack of clearly adhering to what would be the required standards, but, Mr. Speaker, from the report and what the committee is indicating, seeming not to be in agreement to follow what it is that is indicated. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, as I support and engage in this, I in particular would want that when we look at the PIC report, we want to keep the eye on the ball, which would be the extent to which, when we look at the report, we can capture that there are clear areas of oversight that would need to address, that there are areas and issues that we cannot, Mr. Speaker, ignore, and that when we deal with the matters, as much as technicality and interpretation would be seen to be of use, Mr. Speaker, it is extremely important that we do not, as a House, ignore, and we do not, as a House, lose opportunity where we can not only be seen to be standing to ensure that we undertake our oversight responsibility, but that as a matter of fact, from our report, we would then have done our work, because all the other institutions, in terms of their work, be it ACC, be it DPP, would be in a position to take up the matter. So, Mr. Speaker, I would want, as I speak to this, to say that it is a bit unfortunate that there seemed to have been some degree to which there wasn't clarity of what was causing this degree of miscommunication or just lack of clear understanding. But, Mr. Speaker, I think from what we've seen of the floor and the discussions, we can see that the committee has indeed sought to do their work and has communicated. As I conclude, Mr. Speaker, I would want to make an observation that it might really have been useful for the committee to have provided us, perhaps, Mr. Speaker, as has been done in other cases, with minutes of their deliberations, which minutes, Mr. Speaker, in some cases would not only help us to begin to interpret and to see what it is that is presented, but, Mr. Speaker, would also help to ensure that we do not get the impression that there might have been cases or issues that were not exhaustively agreed to or consented to by all members of the committee. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want, as I contribute to this, to support and do it really, Mr. Speaker, from the point of view that there are in this report.
It's somebody who is not keeping there. Yeah, I'll give you one. You should have, that should have come when it was 1 minute. I'll give you that 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like, as I conclude, to indicate that we cannot really lose opportunity to go on record and to spell out and indeed identify where it is that in terms of public financing, public investment, we have had officers that have flouted regulations. And Mr. Speaker, we do not let them, we hold them accountable. Thank you. I support.